Ryan had just purchased his first home. At 30, he was finally able to fulfill a longtime dream of owning a property that he could call his own. The house was older, with some wear and tear, but it had a charm to it, perfect for a young man like him who wanted to make it his own. One of the first things he decided to do was restore the in-ground pool in the backyard. It had been neglected for years, its once clear water now a murky, greenish hue. On a bright Saturday morning, Ryan rolled up his sleeves and started the task. He had no experience with pools, but he figured he could handle the job. The sun beat down on his back as he worked, draining the pool with a pump and scrubbing the sides to get rid of the grime. As the hours passed, the water began to slowly disappear, leaving behind only the grime-streaked floor of the pool. It was then that Ryan noticed something strange. A stench. At first it was faint, something almost imperceptible in the air. But as the water continued to drain, the smell grew stronger. It was an overwhelming, putrid odor, something that reminded him of rotten meat, of decay. Ryan's stomach churned, and he took a step back, unsure of what was happening. His mind raced with possibilities. Was it just the old water? Maybe a small animal had gotten trapped in the pool and died. But this smell, it was different, more sickening, more unsettling. Ryan tried to shake the unease creeping over him and kept going, thinking he could handle it. But the smell only worsened, growing so intense that it made his head spin. He walked to the edge of the pool and looked down. There was something floating just beneath the surface, caught between the edge and the waterline. Ryan squinted, trying to make it out, but it was difficult with the murky water still draining away. His heart skipped a beat as he took a closer look. Something black was visible, a shape wrapped in something dark. Plastic. A body? Ryan froze. His blood ran cold, and his instincts screamed at him to back away, but curiosity pushed him forward. His hands were shaking, but he managed to grab a nearby tool, and with some difficulty, he pulled away the last remnants of the water that had been covering the object. The image that revealed itself made his stomach turn. Inside the pool was a dead body, wrapped tightly in black plastic. It was bizarre, not just any body, but someone who had been bound tightly with an iron chain. The body's limbs were secured, and the person had been trapped in the pool, likely for a long time. The stench was now overwhelming, and Ryan struggled to breathe, his head spinning. What was this? How had this body ended up in his new pool? It made no sense. He had just moved into this house. There was no way the previous owners had left this hidden under the water. Ryan took a step back, his pulse racing, and his hands trembling uncontrollably. He didn't know what to do. His mind was a blur. He knew he needed to call the police. This was far beyond anything he could handle on his own. But even as he reached for his phone, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. How long had this body been here? And why was it hidden so carefully in the dark depths of his pool? The answers Ryan knew were buried beneath the surface, and what he was about to uncover was far worse than he could ever have imagined. Ryan stumbled backward, his breath shallow, struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. The body wrapped in black plastic was lying there, unmoving, its cold and lifeless form seeming to mock him with its very existence. His hands were shaking uncontrollably, his heart pounding so loudly in his chest that it felt as if the whole world could hear it. The smell, the rot and decay that had filled the air, was unbearable now. It stuck to his clothes, his skin, as if the very act of discovering this horror had branded him. He swallowed hard, trying to fight the rising panic within him. What was he supposed to do now? His first instinct was to get as far away from the pool as possible, but the curiosity gnawed at him. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the gruesome sight. How had this body ended up here? And more importantly, who was this person? Ryan forced himself to snap out of his shock and reach for his phone, dialing 911 with shaky hands. As the phone rang, he scanned the area around him. His new house, once full of excitement and promise, now felt like an ancient tomb, suffocating and claustrophobic. His mind raced with questions, each one more terrifying than the last. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone. Ryan could barely hear her over the sound of his own racing thoughts. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his voice. "There's a body in my pool. A dead body." His words came out in a rush, nearly choking him. "It's wrapped in plastic, and it's chained to the bottom." There was a moment of silence on the other end, and Ryan could almost hear the dispatcher typing something into the system. "Sir, stay calm. We're sending officers to your location now. Do not touch anything. Stay where you are." I... I didn't," Ryan stammered, his mind still spinning. I just moved in today. I was working on the pool and then I found this body. We're on our way, sir. Just stay put. Don't try to handle anything yourself." The line went silent as Ryan hung up. His body was stiff with fear, his mind still trying to catch up with what was happening. The police were on their way. But what if they didn't believe him? What if they thought he had something to do with this? He looked down at the pool, at the black plastic and the iron chains that bound the lifeless figure, and the questions kept coming. Who was this person? Had they been killed? Why would someone leave a body like this? The more he stared, the more certain he became that this wasn't an accidental death. The body had been carefully placed, carefully hidden, as if someone didn't want it to be found. His mind raced through the possibilities, each darker than the last. Could it be the previous owners of the house? Maybe they had done something horrible and tried to cover it up? Or was this a sick joke, a twisted message left behind by someone he didn't even know? But the chain, the plastic, there was something about it that made Ryan's blood run cold. This was no prank. This was real, and he was in the middle of it. Ryan glanced around the yard, half expecting someone to jump out from behind the trees or the fence. The air was eerily still, and even though he was surrounded by the sounds of nature, he felt a weight on his shoulders. There was something lurking in the shadows, something that had a dark connection to the body in the pool. His gut instinct told him this was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. The police arrived minutes later, their sirens slicing through the silence. As they stepped out of their vehicles and made their way to the pool, Ryan quickly explained what he had found, pointing toward the box that had once been hidden beneath the murky water. The officers didn't waste time. They immediately went into investigation mode, snapping photographs and asking Ryan questions about his discovery. His answers were fragmented, confused, but the officers didn't seem to be bothered by it. They had seen things like this before, he realized. They were calm, controlled, as they began to examine the scene. But Ryan's stomach twisted when one officer, a seasoned detective with sharp eyes, knelt beside the pool, inspecting the body carefully. "You're sure this was just under the surface?" the officer asked, his voice low. Ryan nodded. "Yes, the water had been draining when I found it." The officer didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared down at the body, a frown tugging at the edges of his mouth. "This is no accident, son. We're going to need to do a full investigation." Ryan's heart sank. No accident? What did that mean? He had no idea what was coming, but something deep in his gut told him that this was just the beginning of a nightmare that was far from over. The officer stood up and turned to another detective. "Get a team here to process this. We need to figure out who this is, how long it's been here, and who's responsible for this." Ryan's world spun out of control. As the officers continued their work, the questions piled up in his mind. What did they mean by no accident? Who had done this? Why? But the answer to those questions was something Ryan could not have possibly prepared for. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the scene as more officers arrived. The woods surrounding the house seemed to grow even darker, the stillness of the forest almost suffocating as the team set to work. The atmosphere had shifted from unsettling to deadly serious, and Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that he had just uncovered something much more sinister than a simple crime. As the detectives worked, they began to collect evidence, snapping pictures and carefully examining every detail of the pool area. Ryan stood off to the side, feeling like an outsider in his own yard. He had been the one to find the body, but now he felt like he was being treated as just another witness. His own questions and fears pushed to the back of his mind. The woman in the black plastic remained eerily still, her body frozen in death. But the chilling reality of the situation made Ryan's thoughts spin. Who had done this? And why leave the body in his pool? in the very house he had just bought. He tried to focus on what the officers were doing, their every move calculated and precise, but his eyes kept drifting back to the body. What was it about her that felt so familiar? Why did it feel like the house was haunted, as if something invisible was watching him from the shadows? A detective walked up to him, his expression serious but not unfriendly. "We'll need to take you in for questioning, Ryan. We need to know everything you can tell us about the house, its previous owners, and anyone who might have had access to it." Ryan nodded numbly, feeling a deep pit of unease growing in his stomach. Who were the previous owners? Why hadn't they told him anything about a body in the pool, or any kind of history that could explain what was happening now? He had bought this house thinking it would be a new start, but this was far from the fresh beginning he had hoped for. As they walked him to the car, he glanced back one last time at the pool. The area around it was becoming more and more crowded with officers, but no matter how many people surrounded it, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something deeper than he could understand. When they reached the police car, Ryan's eyes landed on a small detail that had somehow escaped his notice before. A small scrap of paper sticking out of the ground near the pool was barely visible beneath the dirt. He couldn't tell if it was significant or just trash, but it caught his attention. He bent down, instinctively reaching for it, but just as his fingers touched it, an officer called out, warning him to stay back. "Leave that alone. We'll take care of it." The officer's voice was firm, and Ryan immediately stepped back, the paper now feeling like something he wasn't supposed to touch. But it nagged at him, that small, innocuous scrap of paper. It had to mean something, right? Inside the police car, the weight of everything that had happened began to hit him. The house, the body, the eerie silence in the forest. He felt like he was on the edge of something far bigger than he could comprehend. As the car started moving, he felt a tightness in his chest, a mixture of guilt, fear, and a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. What had he stumbled into? And why did it feel like he was part of something much darker than he could ever imagine? The questions kept swirling in his mind, but one stood out above the rest. Who was the woman in the plastic, and why had she been left in his pool? The police car made its way down the narrow road toward the station, and as the night crept in, Ryan's thoughts began to spiral. He had to know the answers, no matter the cost. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became that this wasn't just some random crime. It was something planned, something deliberate. And as he sat there, alone in the back seat, a chilling thought crossed his mind. What if this wasn't just a body in his pool? What if it was a warning? The hours seemed to drag on as Ryan sat in the interrogation room, his mind swirling with questions and fears. The police had questioned him relentlessly, asking about his background, his reasons for moving into the house, and whether he had any history with the previous owners. They were polite but persistent, and despite his answers, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that they were treating him like a suspect rather than a witness. The room was sterile, with cold fluorescent lights buzzing above him. The air was thick with tension, and he couldn't stop thinking about the body, the black plastic, and the mysterious presence in his new home. The police had removed the woman's body from the pool, but the unsettling images of her lying there, bound and lifeless, still haunted him. He couldn't understand it. Why was she there? What had happened to her? Just then the door opened, and Detective Miller walked in, holding a file in his hand. His expression was serious, his eyes narrowed with focus as he took a seat across from Ryan. Without wasting time, he spoke. "We've identified the body, Ryan." The words felt like a punch to the gut. "It's a woman named Sarah Daniels. She's been missing for almost a year now." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. Missing? But that meant she had been there, in the pool, for over a year. He hadn't even owned the house for more than a few weeks. How could she have ended up there, hidden away? Was it possible the previous owners had known something, or worse, were involved? "We found her in a local missing persons report, but there's something strange about her disappearance," Detective Miller continued, flipping through the file. "She was last seen in the town, a year ago. According to witnesses, she was involved in some kind of altercation. But after that, she just vanished. No leads, no clues. Ryan felt his breath catch in his throat. An altercation? What did that mean? And how had she ended up tied in chains and wrapped in plastic? It didn't add up. He felt as if his world was spinning. Every new piece of information only raised more questions. "So you don't know anything about this woman?" Detective Miller asked, his gaze sharp. Ryan's mind raced. He had just bought the house. How could he know anything about the previous occupants or their connection to Sarah? "No, I don't know her. I just moved in. The house was empty when I bought it." Ryan's voice wavered slightly, despite his best efforts to remain composed. Miller studied him for a moment, his eyes scanning Ryan's face. "We believe you for now, but we'll need to know everything about this place. The more we dig into the past of this house, the more strange things are surfacing." Ryan felt a chill wash over him. Strange things. What could be stranger than what he had already found? "What do you mean, strange thing?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Miller leaned in, lowering his voice. "There are rumors in town, Ryan. This property, there's talk that it has a dark past. There's something about the land, the house, that doesn't sit right with people. We don't have all the details yet, but it's enough to make us question the motives behind what happened to Sarah." Ryan's mind was reeling. A dark past? Rumors? Why hadn't anyone warned him about this when he bought the house? What had he gotten himself into? "What kind of rumors?" Ryan asked, feeling a tightness in his chest. "And how is any of this related to Sarah?" Detective Miller sighed, his eyes darting to the file in front of him. "We don't have all the answers yet, but there's talk of people disappearing around here. Strange happenings at night. People who lived in this house before you, Ryan, they say they heard voices, saw things in the dark. Some of them couldn't take it anymore and left." Ryan felt his blood run cold. He had heard nothing like that from the previous owners. But then again, the house had been vacant for a while. Had the owners been too afraid to stay? Was there something in the very foundation of the house, or the land, that was haunted? The detective paused before continuing, his voice more somber. "We're still piecing it all together, but we're going to need your cooperation. You may be a key to unlocking what happened to Sarah and what's been happening on this property for years." Ryan's head spun. The idea of ghosts or supernatural forces didn't sit well with him, but everything about this house and Sarah's death felt like it was spiraling into something darker than he could understand. The house was supposed to be a new beginning, a fresh start, but now it felt like a trap, and he had no idea who or what was behind it. "What should I do now?" Ryan asked, his voice low, exhausted from the emotional weight of it all. Miller stood up, placing the file on the table. "Stay where you are for now. Keep a low profile. We'll be in touch. But don't go anywhere, Ryan. You're in the middle of something that could change everything." As Ryan sat there alone in the cold interrogation room, the realization settled in. He wasn't just a bystander in this mess. He was entangled in it now. His new house, his dream home, was tied to secrets. And the more he learned, the deeper he sank into a mystery that was far darker than anything he could have imagined. The following days were a blur for Ryan. The police had gone through every inch of the property, inspecting every nook and cranny, digging deeper into the history of his home. The officers' questions were more frequent, their eyes sharper, as if they suspected he might know more than he was letting on. But Ryan truly had no answers. He was just as much in the dark as they were. As the investigation continued, strange things began happening around the house. Objects moved on their own, lights flickered at random, and at night Ryan would hear scratching sounds from inside the walls. It felt like the house itself was alive, like it was whispering to him, drawing him deeper into its secrets. One evening, when the moon was full and the fog had begun to roll in, Ryan decided to go back to the pool. He couldn't shake the images of the body wrapped in plastic. He had to know more. The police had taken the body and left, but Ryan couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious, ominous presence that lingered in the air. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became that the house and the forest around it were connected to something ancient, something evil. Ryan stood at the edge of the pool, the fog creeping over the ground like a living thing. He felt a chill run down his spine as he looked down into the empty space where the body had once been. The water was gone, but the smell still clung to the air. an oppressive reminder of what he had discovered. The silence seemed to stretch on forever, but something was wrong. The stillness felt unnatural, like the world around him was holding its breath. "You shouldn't have come back," the voice startled him. Ryan spun around, his heart racing. Standing behind him was a figure, a woman shrouded in darkness, her face hidden beneath a black veil. She stood motionless, her presence haunting and oppressive. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. He had seen her before, the woman in the black plastic. But now she was here, alive, and somehow it felt as though she had been waiting for him. "Who are you?" Ryan asked, his voice trembling. His body felt rooted to the spot, as if he couldn't escape. The woman had an aura of mystery and terror that seemed to surround her, consuming him whole. The woman stepped forward, her voice low and haunting. "I am the keeper of the forest's secrets, the one who watches over the souls bound to this land." She reached out, her fingers brushing Ryan's cheek as she whispered, "You've awakened something ancient, something that will never let you go." Ryan stumbled back, fear rising in his chest. "What do you mean?" She tilted her head, her eyes glowing faintly. "You found her, the one who was buried in the pool. She is just one of many. The house, the land, it is cursed, bound by blood and darkness. You have opened the door, Ryan. You cannot close it now." Her words hit him like a cold wave, and his knees buckled, nearly giving way beneath him. I didn't know. I didn't mean to." The woman took another step forward, the air growing colder. "It doesn't matter. Now you are a part of it. You cannot escape. The forest has claimed you, and just like the others, you will never be free." Ryan's mind raced, his heart pounding in his chest. He needed to escape. He needed to get out of this place before it consumed him entirely. But the woman's presence was suffocating, and every step he tried to take back felt like he was being pulled into something far deeper, something from which there was no return. Suddenly there was a loud bang, a sharp, unsettling sound that broke the eerie stillness of the night. Ryan turned his head, his eyes widening in fear as the fog began to swirl around him, the trees shaking as if in response to an unseen force. "Run, Ryan!" The woman's voice was barely audible as it echoed around him. "Run while you still can!" But it was too late. The ground beneath him shifted. The air turned thick, and Ryan felt an intense pull toward the center of the forest, toward the house that had become a prison. His limbs felt heavy, and though he tried to fight it, his body was being dragged against his will, deeper into the curse that had taken hold of this place. The woman's figure faded into the mist, leaving behind only her haunting voice, echoing in the distance. "You're one of us now, Ryan." With that final whisper, the world around him seemed to close in, and the darkness consumed him.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.